Hello, everyone. My name is Lanre Olushola. I'd like to welcome each and every one of you to the American Institute of Architects International Region, Nigeria series on business of architecture. This is the second in our series, which was started in January 2021. Ekaete completed her bachelor's and master's degrees in architecture at the Enugu campus of the University of Nigeria and started her career as a pupil architect with Sheltak Associates in 1991. In January 1994, she joined ATO Architects Limited and became one of the firm's directors in December 1998. Her experience in the architecture and construction industries has been quite diverse. She is a strong project and design architect who has won several design competitions. Her experience includes work in master planning, oil and gas, the aviation industry, corporate and financial institutions, residential and housing projects, ecclesiastical buildings, educational institutions, recreational facilities, parks and playgrounds. As construction manager, she has also carried out estimating and seen several projects to completion. She is experienced in physical needs assessment of building structures. She worked at KEO and Associates, construction managers, design builders, and Community Development Solutions, LLC. These are sister companies in Detroit, Michigan, in the United States from 2005 to 2012, and became a Michigan licensed builder, a certified playground safety inspector, a LEED accredited professional, and received a total of 40 hours of OSHA as Occupational Safety and Health Administration training. She is licensed to practice architecture in Nigeria by ARCON and is a fellow of the NIA. She first became an international associate of the American Institute of Architects around 2006 while living in Detroit. She became managing director of ATO Architects Limited in November 2019, on time to be at the helm in navigating the firm through a pandemic and a recession. Ekaete is a published writer and an avid cyclist. Ekaete is going to take us through her presentation on project financing. We need architects to understand the business of architecture and how to finance all kinds of projects. Ekaete, you have the floor now. 25 minutes.
Thank you very much, Lanre. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen. Okay, I hope everybody can see my screen. Can you see my screen?
Yes, we can. Yes, we can.
Yes, we can.
Okay. Okay, thank you very much, Lanre, and thank you to everybody who is listening. Thank you to the leadership of the AIA International Region for this opportunity, really to rub minds, because money, I don't know whether anybody really knows, about money enough to be an authority, because it's always a moving target. And I'm hoping that I will also be learning today. I'm pleased that Nigeria is now in the room in the AIA. Most of my experiences are drawn from Nigeria, Lagos especially, where I work out of. Like Lanre mentioned, I worked for 8 years in Detroit in construction management, that's where I first joined the AIA. So I've had some experience also in seeing what happens with the financing of projects in Detroit. Okay. So the first thing I wanted to talk about is, in the mid-90s, a colleague of mine invited me to join a group of people who, she said, would be joining funds together. I mean, it was a new concept to me at the time. This was about 1994 or 95. It was a completely new concept to me at the time. And this thing called a susu is now, and it has always been something called by various names in various African communities. And many people, especially in the informal sectors, continue to use this means of aggregating funds together to carry out various personal projects, doing major things, at least major in the lives of the participants. And what it was that there were 6 of us. Each of us had to contribute 10,000 naira every month. At that time, that was a lot of money, but a portion of your pay. So we would contribute 10,000 naira every month. So each month, one of the 6 of us would get all of that money. That's the 60,000 naira that had been jointly contributed, and then this would be rotated around until the last person had collected the money. And I found this to be very useful for me at the time because it enabled me to pay my rent. For people who know, in Lagos, Nigeria, you pay rent for at least 1 year at a time, sometimes 2 years at a time. So it was useful for me also for buying appliances that I needed at the time because I was just starting out in my first accommodation. And I have found as I have progressed, that a susu, and it's called by various names. In northern Nigeria, it's called adashi or adaji. In the southwestern part of Nigeria, it's called ajo, and ajo is basically like together. In the southeastern part, it's called isusu. In the markets, like I said, in the informal sectors, that is how people generally save money, in this cooperative kind of way, and how they are able to accomplish personal goals. They also are able to take loans from these cooperatives, and usually they have somebody who is trusted and nominated by all of them to administer this fund, and so that's it's from that point of view I wanted to start this a place called Creek City. Now, some people may or may not know that there is a federation of slum dwellers in Nigeria, and in fact in the world. There's a Slum Dwellers International, but the federation in Nigeria, in Lagos, they have identified slums in various parts of the city. And one of the key things that is a requirement, because the reason why they do not invest in their environments is primarily because of poor title or no title for the areas that they occupy. The insecurity of the title is what prevents them from investing in those areas that some of them have called home for decades. You know, places like Ajegunle and several other slums on the fringes, you know, of major urban developments in Lagos. Now, I speak of Creek City particularly because I had the opportunity of talking with the leaders of the group who organize this development, and basically what it is, you know, if you see in the picture on the right here, you'll see the area that is Apapa, Ajegunle, you know, basically islands in between with creeks in between. Now, some of these communities, you know, they claim to have been there for about 80 years, and they have been speaking with governments about developing their area. They've also even spoken with Slum Dwellers International and other organizations, you know, regarding developing their area, creating, you know, a sustainable city and that kind of thing. And they engaged a professional to actually help them with drawings and, you know, help them sell this idea to other people. Now, the slum dwellers themselves, one of the things that ties them together in the federation is Isusu. So for you to be considered a part of this whole development, this whole organization and the possibilities, you must be part of what they call a savers group. And you must save money weekly. I don't know whether they have a limit, but most of the people who are there in the informal sector work in all kinds of businesses, barrow pushers, small traders, mechanics, and that kind of thing. So the amount of money they have cannot be that great, you know, but the key idea is for them to be involved in saving and, you know, be disciplined about it. You know, so rising out of that, I'll talk briefly about a project on Lagos Island. Now, this project is in central Lagos and is a joint project between Lagos State government, a partnership between Lagos State government and a group of families on Lagos Island. And what happened here is that 12 families on Lagos Island pooled their land together. And in partnership with the Lagos State government, they agreed, and I think they had a series of meetings, town halls, interactions, deciding what to do with that land that they had pooled together. So the equity that they brought in was their land, and then government had to source the financing for this. And they've been able to create this 11-story structure, which houses 48 units, you know, comprising 1, 2, and 3 bedroom units, car parking, and other facilities. It hasn't been without problems, but I thought, you know, it was a good example to show of a way that a project can be financed. Next, I'll talk about a project that we did several years ago, starting about 1993. This property is in Elelenwo in Port Harcourt. Port Harcourt is in Rivers State in Nigeria. Now, what it was originally, the land was owned by one of the helicopter companies, and they wanted to develop like about maybe 7, 8 units on the land, which was very vast, as you can see. Now, one of the IOCs, the International Oil Companies, has a pension fund. And so they decided to get involved in this and use funds from their pension fund to help develop this property, so that rather than having just a few units, they could have something that could eventually be yielding income for their pension fund. And so that was what they did, So instead of having 5-6 units, we ended up having about 34 or 35 units, generating income for their cooperative, their pension fund. And later on, the building you see in the middle there, which is a short stay apartment block, was added, because it became that profitable. The short stay apartment block was added to that. So this is an example of a cooperative, that is yielding profit for its members. So the members invest in the cooperative, and the cooperative makes investments. So almost like investing your money in a interest yielding account. So the value, the added value, goes back to those who have bought into the cooperative. We have done some work for non-profit organizations. One of them is the Anglican Church. We've done quite a bit of work for the Anglican Church. And this particular project is the Centenary City. The Centenary City is located in the area called Ibeju-Lekki, which is between Lagos main island of Lekki and Ekpe. You would need a map to understand where that is. But along the Lekki-Ekpe axis, is Ibeju-Lekki. The funding for this project, which includes, you will see on the right there, some low-cost housing development that has commenced. And the funding from this has come from private investors and, of course, the congregants of the church. Now, with our experience with church projects, we always know when going in that the project takes as long as it takes, because the money is coming in from contributions from individuals, So sometimes a church project can take 10 years, 12 years. It just takes as long as it takes. And, so it's difficult even for a financial advisor to a church to be able to estimate what exactly the cost of building that project will be, because it's over such a long time. And in a volatile market like ours is, it's almost impossible to predict. We've also done work with a non-profit organization called Development Africa. Development Africa have done, their focus is on healthcare and education. And a lot of their work is in rural areas in Nigeria, not in urban centers, but in rural areas in Nigeria. So they provided, so we designed the maternity center, them, and so on, So like this one, I believe this one is in Bayelsa State. They have one like this in Kwara State, in Taraba State. And the way these projects are funded are in cash and in kind by donations, purely by 100% by donations. So like the roofing is a donation, some other building materials like tiles and also all that may also be donations. All of the funding comes from people who are who are interested in seeing these developments in these rural areas. A few people who are from those areas have also become involved, And all of the state governments, Imo was also one of the locations. All of the state governments have also become interested because they see that this particular group of people are actually quite serious, and they've delivered on all of the projects that they have started. Okay, so moving on to government. Government projects are primarily funded by taxes. This particular picture is a portion of the FIRS headquarters in Abuja. FIRS, the Federal Inland Revenue Service. Now, government projects can also be funded by debts, you know, as many of us are aware. So for those who buy shares and that kind of thing, you will probably have been aware that in the last few years, the government has been selling treasury bills and that kind of thing. And that is what, apart from our taxes, that is what they use to fund various government projects. We also have another type of government project. The Central Bank of Nigeria, and I'm not sure whether it is like that in other countries, but the Central Bank of Nigeria has financed the design and construction of centers of excellence in several universities in Nigeria. Now, what these centers of excellence are, they are postgraduate business faculties, which comprise the faculty with auditorium, teaching areas, seminar rooms, and all of that, and as well as accommodation, most of them for about 150 students. These are expected to be older students because, like, it's a post-graduate institution. So we did the ones in Ibadan, in Enugu, and in Zaria. You know, like I said, funded by the Central Bank of Nigeria. So the finances of the Central Bank of Nigeria come from, I guess, everywhere, from the statutory activities that they have to do with the banks, you know, from government funds and so on, you know. So that is one of the ways we've experienced the funding of government projects. While I worked in Detroit, we did a complete gutting and major renovation of a recreation, one of the bigger recreation centers in the city, Northwest Activity Center. The project was quite massive, and also the Detroit Recreation Department was planning to move its offices from downtown Detroit into this facility as well. The cost at the time was over $16 million. And what happens with this kind of project, because it's so big? One, there was the involvement of you know, residents of the city, you know, in taking the decision to spend this amount of money. And then secondly, the money, you know, which came from tax revenues and so on, and allocations from government, was bonded. And that means that, I mean, that's my understanding of it, is that the money was earmarked, you know, and possibly placed in escrow so that it could not be used for anything else. And that project was completed around 2007 or 2008, thereabouts. Generally in the US, most people who own a home in the US take out, you know, a mortgage, usually 15 to 30 year mortgage to buy a home. A mortgage is a financial instrument, and usually the interest rates for mortgages are usually low, usually around 5%, 6%, thereabouts. For mortgage financing, individuals are required to qualify for the kind of funding that they can get, the amount of funding that they can get, to see, whether based on their income, they can make repayments on the loan over the period of time. In Nigeria, we've tried mortgage financing. A few people do mortgage financing, a few banks do mortgage financing, but it's very difficult. It doesn't work very well here in Nigeria because the cost of borrowing is very high. And, there are not good enough structures in place to assess the credibility of people. As many people know, even people who are supposed to be well-to-do default very often on their loans here in Nigeria. So it's a very, very difficult situation when it comes to mortgage financing. One of the more common ways projects in Nigeria are financed is public-private partnerships. We experienced this with, there is a housing estate that was built in the 1980s. You'll see a few pictures of it here and the condition in which it is now. It's the Adeniji Adele housing estate, which was built in 4 phases at the time. Now, in the first phase, a few years ago, some of the buildings started to sink. Now, what we understand is that when these, at the time these buildings were being built, or the land for it was being decided, the third mainland bridge, Nigeria's longest bridge, was being built. Now, the sand that was excavated from the construction work going on was poured into this area, which was basically a swamp. And they decided to build this estate. Now, this is a story I'm trying to look for further corroboration on, but the understanding is that there weren't any major soil tests carried out, and anyway, over time, there weren't high buildings. All of the buildings are 4 levels, but over time, the buildings have started to sink, and the water table here is quite high. It's almost the same as the mean sea level. So Lagos State government for several years have had this plan to completely demolish this estate and build a new estate in its place. The building, there are, I can't remember how many buildings, but the building, the 4 phases house 750 families in all of these buildings. So one of the things that Lagos State wanted to do was to build an estate that would not only accommodate those 750 families, but also have some, units left over that would be used to cover the costs. Because you see, the agreement, at least with the first people who were evacuated, 5 buildings were demolished because they were sinking very badly. So those first 5 groups were rehoused temporarily at the cost of government, at government's cost. you know, so the people who are left are expecting the same terms, you know. So the assumption is that basically every single person every single family will be given a new unit when the redevelopment is done. So the state government put out a request for, an EOI, an expression of interest request. And, people were supposed to come up, and show that, they were able to do this kind of project and get, for most important, get funding for this kind of project. It was going to be a public-private partnership with the main equity from government being the land. But again, there's a question about that, because the people who live here bought these units at that time, But anyway, a proposal was made, so that the 750 units will be replaced with a high density development that had a total of 2,960 units. Now, the discussions were with the Lagos State Urban Renewal Agency, and then also with the PPP Office. The PPP Office, the Public-Private Partnership Office, is sort of attached to the governor's office. And so we found that, the PPP office is required to speak with investors who wish to partner with government for carrying out this kind of project. Now, the initial questions, if things had gone, in the correct order, we should have been speaking with the PPP office early. Unfortunately, we didn't get to start speaking with them till, a lot of work had already gone ahead. But anyway, the initial questionnaire, included questions like, description of the project, what are the project objectives, benefits of the project to the state. Now, just to tell you that by the time they were asking these questions, we already had a design. And the design had been managed by the Urban Renewal Agency. But the PPP office needed to know, what the transaction structure would be, why we were even choosing a PPP model in the first place, who were the stakeholders and beneficiaries, what was the viability, the consortium, the company structure, and so on, expected project timelines, and of course, supporting the documentation. There were several hurdles with this one because there were both, apart from financial implications, there were also legal implications because they had signed an MOU with the first group of people who had been displaced, and the subsequent groups were expecting the same treatment. Now, the PPP office was expecting a financial model, because all of these questions can only be answered with a financial model. And basically what the financial model is showing, what the cost of this investment, and when are we going to start getting returns on this investment. That's the bottom line, to put it very, very simply. But the things that we had to take into consideration. So for example, the land and the drainage were in very, very poor shape, so looking at the entire infrastructure, because the drainage passing through that land ends up in the Lagos Lagoon. And the drainage is not just from the land of that facility, but also from surrounding land and properties. So basically an important channel that cannot be blocked or cannot be isolated. Then there's the infrastructure and the other costs required. So we're required to create a model that built all of this built all of the considerations. What were we going to be able to commercialize, things like shops and all of that, to help to bring back returns into this project. So
We need to start rounding up now, Ekaete. Start rounding up.
Okay, yeah. So we did that. Presented a financial model to them, and one of the things we needed to do also was to ask for some concessions, which would make the project more viable. Things like reduction in the cost of title and some of those statutory fees that go to government. Another example of a type of funding we've been involved in is TED Fund. We have two projects that are being funded by TED Fund. What TED Fund is a tertiary education trust fund, and their job is to fund rehabilitation of university, polytechnic, and college of education projects. And it's based on an act that was established. What happens is that when companies are taxed each year, they pay 2% education tax, and that is the fund that TED Fund uses for building these projects. This graph just shows cost of borrowing over time in Nigeria. Also, we've experienced projects, where the financing is foreign. This is a foreign government, French diplomatic campus. This is not our project. This is not something we're involved in, but also this is foreign government funding, and the new railway station in Ebute Metta, Lagos, funded by the Chinese government from their state companies and state funds. We've also been involved in development projects where basically you have the land, you start the project, and you have off-takers who buy into the project early, maybe when you haven't even done the foundation, and so they get to pay less, but also give you the cash flow that you need to move the project along. And then finally, I've written a list of terms, glossary terms. I won't go into all of them. The information is out there for people to find about. And I think I am done. Thank you very much.